Once again, welcome to MMS-201. This is a wonderful session on Flex Components and Microsoft Teams. We are very, very excited to be joined by a special group of presenters, and we hope to have a very successful class today. We are seeing some technical issues, and we may see some delays in advancing the slides. Our presenters today are the MVP, and he likes to call himself a Microsoft Most Valuable Professional. Sometimes he calls himself the Most Valuable Player. Mr. Jimmy Vaughn, he's our Technical Director for Enterprise, for the Enterprise channel. We are also joined by Mr. Graham Walsh, our Technical Director for UC Enterprise out of the UK. And your co-hosts and moderators for today's session are Mr. Jason Mulder, our Technical Director for UC Enterprise, and I am Richard Sasson, your Global Director of Technical Services. We, of course, have on our back end are the wonderful Ms. Sherry and the wonderful Mr. Carl helping us with the presentation. We are going to keep an eye on the audio and video. If the quality gets really bad, we are going to end up potentially rescheduling the call. I'm seeing lots of audio gone statements. So hopefully you guys continue to hear me. It's back again. That's good. So again, Mr. Vaughn's not saying anything at the moment, so that's great.
Not yet.
All right,
No.
so we're going to turn this over to Jimmy and Graham. I'm going to drop my video to help reduce the bandwidth, and hopefully that will work. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. James Vaughn.
Thanks, Rich. As Rich introduced, my name is Jimmy Vaughn. I've been Masters now for many, many years. I think I was at the first one. I probably missed one of them, but I've been with Crestron for 18 years. I am a certified master programmer as well, as many of you are out there. Unfortunately, this couldn't be in person. Those of you that come in person, you know that my classes are very interactive. So Graham, Jason, Rich have all said they'll keep me on task and sort of help me out with some of these moving slides. So we'll start out first with this class is basically built on the other classes. We expect that you guys took the MFX 201 and 203 class. And there's other learnings that are available as well. We know that the slides are actually going to be posted, so we did include some hyperlinks for you to go ahead and have some external education as well. So why don't we first start out by talking about how Microsoft's UC journey with Crestron has began. So way back when Microsoft was doing Link, Office Communicator, live communications, they knew that they needed a conference room solution. Excuse me. And back then they knew that the leader in conference room technology was Crestron. Crestron controlled 8,000 Microsoft conference rooms. And that was basically where they wanted to begin was we need a conference room system. Let's think about who we're going to invite into this program. There were 4 original players that came into that, that environment. One was Polycom, one was Life Size, one was Smart, and there was Crestron. We were the first ones that were asked to be a part of that journey, and the reason why is we were already in their conference room. So it was very selfish of them to include us. Back when Link Server was around, we had RL, and I'm not sure how many actually programmed RL, but RL was a huge success for Crestron. It sort of put us in that IT and AV variant where we went ahead and had some great success with things. But now we've moved on to the Microsoft Teams room systems. And Teams is something that Microsoft has launched to sort of go ahead and take over where Skype left off. So Graham, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody what we're going to cover in this class right now in the next 90 minutes?
Sure. So thanks, Jimmy. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. And so we're going to cover, what is Microsoft Teams and what else can it do? It's not just a video platform. There's a lot more to it as well. And we're going to start then discussing, why you're wanting to look to deploy a Microsoft Teams room and where it will fit in the environments and obviously what Microsoft things go around it. We're then going to give you a general overview of what the components of a Microsoft Teams room are, just to refresh some of your memories. They've been discussed on other sessions too. And we're actually just going to very briefly touch on what the Crestron flavor is. So as Jimmy mentioned, we've been doing it for a long time. So we're just going to give an overview of what we have from Crestron. And we always mention this term Microsoft Teams Room. That's the new modern flavor, also known as SRSV2, Skype Room System, which is the original name. And it's still actually a Microsoft Teams Room, but also Skype for Business. So we'll touch on that a bit later as well. And then finally, we'll talk about licensing requirement, what licensing you require to have these operational. Because a lot of the time you won't want to use your personal account. They are a shared resource in the meeting room. So what is Microsoft Teams? Well, it's the platform that you use maybe daily that you might have started been using for IM, instant messaging, for group chat, collaboration with and the whole idea is that it's persistent. So it's always there. You can always go and find it. For those of you used to using maybe Skype, it was always tricky to go and find those past conversations. It improved over time. But also point-to-point calling. So being able to have a one-to-one call. But the key for meeting spaces, again, is having multiple people on a call together. So this is where the Teams meeting server, and again, Microsoft Teams was wholly built in the cloud. There is no on-premises version. Everything is in the Microsoft cloud, sitting within the Azure network, and Microsoft have a brilliant backbone supporting this.
And it's also important to note, Graham, Microsoft Teams is actually the fastest growing Microsoft platform in Microsoft's history. So when you think of what Microsoft has, they've had Excel, they've had PowerPoint, they've had even Microsoft Project and things like that. And to know that Microsoft Teams has been the fastest and most widely adopted program in Microsoft's history is amazing. Those of you that have actually used it know what the power of Teams is. A lot of people look at it and they say, oh, it's just a replacement for email. And that's not true, because it actually doesn't replace email. It's just, others will say, oh, it's just a chat program. But that's not true either, because it has so many other points of vision to this. This is your single pane of glass for a workday. And I know, Graham, when I come into the office and I fire up my PC, back in the days when we could go to an office, my first place to look is actually in the activity window of Teams. And I look to see what people are posting. Now, I am a member of a couple thousand teams, I believe, at this point, between different tenants as a part of Microsoft's most valuable professional community. I actually have access to a whole bunch of things inside of Microsoft itself. So when I'm going from tenant to tenant, there's a lot of things that are sort of presented to you. It can be information overload if you let it, but the truth is it's actually organized very, very nicely, where it just gives you the opportunity to see what's important to you, even though everybody else might be in it as well.
Indeed. And then, it's all part of the bigger Microsoft ecosystem in terms of the other applications such as SharePoint and the other applications within Office 365. And then lots of integrations to other platforms such as Zoom, what we're using today. So if you want to use Teams for your enterprise collaboration, but you want to use the video element from Zoom, there's an app for that. So lots of great integrations. So we're going to run a quick poll now. Richard, over to you to fire off this first poll. We've got a few polls throughout today. So just a general question, are you using Teams? And, and how long have you been using them? So unfortunately, I'm not allowed to vote. It tells me here. I've been using it since October 2016 when it went into preview. So very early adopter. And it's, I love it. It's a great tool to use day to day. And as you say, Jimmy, keeps everything together in one place.
And it's really helped the organization, Crestron as a whole. We adopted Teams very early on, as Graham said. And the idea of it was to basically live where we wanted everybody to sort of go to with their conference rooms, with their technology, and see some of the new stuff that's been out there. So we adopted it very early, but it's also helped us in this days of remote working. I don't know where we would be if we didn't have the idea of the SharePoint background. I mean, for sharing documents and sharing everything across the true team that's actually working together. We've got a whole bunch of new products and different things like that, and those all have their own teams, so that when somebody goes from one project to another project, they don't have to sort of be caught up on everything that everybody's been working on. They can just look at exactly what's inside of that channel, and they can go back because everything's persistent, and they can see what was being discussed and where things were. And it really helps facilitate even that onboarding process of somebody that didn't have all the information before. They can just look inside of the team, and now they're part of the community and that channel that's actually going through the same project.
And that's good for disparate workforces, especially across time zones, where you can leave information and people pick it up in the morning when they wake up. So I can leave you a load of tasks when I finish my nighttime for you to wake up to.
Hey guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the poll. Jimmy, there's a lot of requests to lower your mic volume, Mr. Radio Announcer. You are a little bit louder than the rest of us. I know you like to.
I like that.
You like to have the booming presence. I'm
I
going to
do
go ahead
like
and
that.
stop the poll, and I'm going to share the results with everyone. This is actually a pretty broad spectrum here, gang. We can see that about 25% is the largest grouping here, and it's 1 to 2 years. We also have 6 to 12 months for 19%. But here's an interesting thing, guys. You got 18% of our audience who have never used Teams.
Now, here's one
So-
thing to note, Rich, too. Teams actually has a free component to it. So those 18% that actually voted that they've never used Teams, I would encourage them to actually go up. And I know that Teams is actually starting to promote even a daily life that can be shared with your family and your friends and things like that. So there's a big sort of social element that's going to come of this too. So I would encourage those guys to sort of go out and look at the free versions that are here after this class is actually done.
Right, absolutely. And I know we have a lot to cover in the 90-minute session, and there's a lot of things that are going on, like certifications, training, and all that kind of fun stuff. But you guys have a lot to cover, so why don't we move on?
Sure. Thanks, Rich. So the reason why we're all here, we're here to talk actually about the conference room. So although Graham and I talk about Teams and we talk about everything that's there, that's really the backbone of what we're talking about. When we talk about the Microsoft Teams room systems, we're talking about a conference room system, or even something that can be just a little huddle room space or something like that. These are purpose-built solutions that are built by Microsoft, and they work directly into the Microsoft Teams ecosystem. One of the things that is the big sort of draw to this is the single touch one click join meeting. So I had a C-level executive from Crestron that actually joined recently, and he came up to me and he said, I really love the way that we've done conference rooms here. I'm so surprised how easy it is. In his previous positions, he would always be the last one that goes into the room because he was challenged with dial-in screens. He was challenged with, oh, I have to get this technology up and working. Oh, I have to figure out a PIN code and I have to do that. So he didn't want to actually be the first one to the room, because the first one to the room was the one that actually had to make that meeting experience come up inside of the room itself. With that single touch join experience, he's now confident enough that he can be the first one into the room. He can hit that button and he's into the meeting. He no longer has to sort of be 5 minutes casually late as a lot of people sort of do when they have those complicated room systems. So the single touch join is something that has been sort of revolutionary to people. It's not only on your desktop, now it goes to your conference room. So this is sort of why they built these room systems, is because, like I said, it fits into the digital workflow and removes the complexity of all of these different things that happen inside of the room. I know we as programmers always think we made this the simplest room ever, but I can tell you as an engineer myself, I want every single button to be there. I might not need it, but I want every single button to be there. And I have seen so many rooms that have that idea of thinking, and people think, oh, well, what if this person needs this? Or what if we need to do this? And that's what these are, really purpose-built rooms. I have another customer that contacted me and said, there's not that much to set up on these room systems. And that's the idea, because they're centrally managed through the Teams portal. One thing to note, Graham and I love acronyms, and Microsoft loves acronyms. There's going to be a lot of acronyms that we use throughout the presentation, and what we've tried to do is, where we use acronyms, we sort of explain them up front. So when you hear us say MTR is the Microsoft Team Room system, and that's something to sort of note, because, like I said, Microsoft loves sort of their acronyms with AD, AAD, SCCM, and all the different things that sort of surround these things. So don't get put off by the acronym. there's even times where I'm in a meeting with a whole bunch of smart Microsoft people, and I'm sitting in front of Google, and I'm going, all right, what does this mean? So it's something that they do. It's something that we've got to sort of adopt to. I try to sort of explain things when we do it, but if you're confused by anything, go ahead and throw it in the chat. Jason or Rich will tell us exactly what it is. Now, it's important to note when we say Crestron Flex, Flex is the MTR or Microsoft Teams room system from Crestron. It is a brand name. So Crestron Flex is part of this ecosystem of us and other partners inside of the program. Those other partners have the same software that we do. Our value add is in our page flip and how we've controlled conference rooms for the last 40 years. It really gets into what do you want to do inside of the room to choose the right partner. We've got revolutionary devices. We've actually designed these purpose-built with the idea of the last 40 years of knowing conference rooms and what you guys as integrators or programmers or so on and so forth have done inside of those rooms. So we sort of kept it very, very casual and very sort of straightforward for you guys. While some other people may look at it and go, I don't understand why this is here or why this is here. These are really tools that are built for the integrators and for the people that are just wanting to put the same exact system everywhere, whether it's a small room, whether it's a medium room, or the largest of conference rooms, which is where all have lived for the last 40 years. So what's the right MTR solution for you? This is a challenge that we've seen. So when we started doing RL, we saw this with a lot of people. What they were doing is they were going into these customers and they were saying, oh, I want to sell you this Flex system or RL system or one of these Microsoft systems. And you have to change your thinking because the right way to sell these is if a customer has Skype for Business or Microsoft Teams today, yes, they're a potential customer that's right for this solution. But if they don't have that solution, you shouldn't shoehorn a customer into the Teams or Skype solution just because you want to get their conference room up and running with these systems. If they've got Skype for Business or they've got Teams, this is the right solution inside of their room. But we don't want to sort of turn around and say, oh, you need the Microsoft solution everywhere because your conference rooms are going to have it. It's not the right way to do it. We saw the challenge with it. We understood it, and we just want to point it out. But we're going to also give you guys later in the presentation a little bit of understanding why these systems were built from that transition for Skype for Business to Microsoft Teams. And Graham, if a client is looking for the native solution, they really should look at this platform, correct?
Absolutely. So this gives them that, as we say, that native raw experience, that simple one touch to join. But however, that's not maybe suitable for everyone. We know from a lot of enterprises that they have multiple strategies because of growth, acquisition, with other enterprises they've merged with, for example, and they might have Teams in North America and Zoom in the EMEA. So how do you handle that? So there's a couple of ways. And again, there are devices out there that allow you to have some native, but also bring your own device. Another acronym, we love them. So you bring your laptop to the meeting room and you plug it into the device that's sitting on the desk, and then you can make that call. So whether you're using a third-party application, you can still use the room peripherals that you've engineered and what you put in and not have to huddle around. So that's obviously one thing when we go back to work, when we go back to an office, will you want to huddle around a laptop and have people breathing over your shoulder? So by utilizing the room acoustics that you've designed, you'll then be able to use your laptop to drive the meeting and then use the room acoustics, camera, microphone to enjoy that meeting experience, and then obviously remain socially distant in the room as well. So this is where we have some solutions from Crestron that we can have these, what we call open UC or a hybrid environment where you've got native Microsoft Teams or Zoom rooms, but then that ability to do this BYOD environment. So it gives you that flexibility, pardon the pun and the product name, but it gives you the choice that you're not locked into one environment and that those rooms can then be fully utilized and not just have to do, one odd meeting room is a third-party platform. All meetings can be multi-purpose and you can get the best value out of that.
And Graham, we saw this with Crestron Mercury years ago when we introduced Crestron Mercury. I mean, I know I taught the class at Masters that debuted Mercury to you guys and showed you how you take it out of the box, you use it, but the driving force was your laptop or your PC itself. And the reason why is because we really didn't want to sort of continue to sort of rip and replace hardware. One of the biggest challenges when you go into conference rooms, and one of the biggest expenses for customers when they go through these changes, is the rip and replacing of hardware itself. It's something that nobody wants to sort of undertake, because you've got devices that are inside of a room that still have to amortize, and they're expensive overall to do this. So BYOD was something that we introduced with Mercury, and we still don't understand customers' need for this. There's not a lot of customers out there that only do Skype or Teams meetings, or only do Zoom meetings, or only do X meetings or Y meetings. There's always that mix that sort of comes in. And this BYOD with the new Mercury X allows us to actually bring that audio, the speaker, the microphone, and the camera from that in-room system, and you can plug it into your laptop, and now the far end feels like they're inside of an integrated room, even though your laptop is running that. As soon as you unplug your device inside of that room, it goes back to the native room system, and everything's sort of inside, ready for that 90% usage. We know that Skype and Teams, if you're selling a Teams room system, is the primary use case, and is probably going to be used for that single touch join many, many times. But allowing customers to actually have that flexibility to bring in their own PC and join another call is really what this solution really was focused for and engineered for. So now let's go ahead and talk about the MTR and why it was built and how everything sort of came to go through. So when Microsoft goes ahead and they decide that they want to do a Microsoft Teams room system, and they invite a partner in, what they do is they actually have a product, what's called a PRD, a product reference design from Microsoft, and it says your device must have X, Y, and Z. All MTR devices are based on Windows 10, and that's an important sort of distinction to understand. There are devices out there, they actually introduce what's called a collaboration bar. And those collaboration bars are not built on Windows 10, but they're not true MTR systems. They can join Teams meetings, they can join Skype meetings, but they're not going to get all the benefits of a true Microsoft Teams room system. So while there is a benefit to those products, and there is sort of a product category that Microsoft has seen and said, hey, this fits these rooms. If you want to stay with the true MTR that gets you the proximity join, that gets you the magic whiteboard, that gets you all the features that are out there and take advantage of, it is a Windows 10 IoT enterprise purpose-built device that you want to stay with. And there's a couple of different partners that are out there, Crestron being one of them. We actually ship with Intel. We have a huge partnership with Intel. Many of you guys are also digital media fans. Digital media is built on Intel. We have the Nook that's built on Intel. We've also got the Movidius chip inside of our camera that is actually built by Intel as well. So Intel is a huge partner of ours, and it's something that we've been also bringing into this MTR room system as well.
So just one bit of information there. Jimmy talked about the collaboration bars versus the Microsoft Teams rooms. Again, they're designed for a purpose, and they're actually designed for Microsoft Teams. So they actually can't join Skype calls natively, and they won't get some of the new features that Microsoft are working on, which we'll talk about in a little bit as well. So what is a Crestron Microsoft Teams room? So when we built the product, we decided not just to have a one size fit all, but build different products for different room sizes, because no two rooms are the same between enterprises. Every room wants a different space. And our idea was to make it a consistent look and feel. So whether you're in a small meeting room, you're in a medium room, or you're in this large auditorium stroke classroom, you have a consistent Microsoft experience wherever you go, and have that brilliant one-touch join. So we're able to, as Jimmy mentioned, have the history in the rooms, being able to carry on controlling that room. So when you guys design, the automation for that room and multiple cameras, etc., you still have that ability with the Crestron Flex range, and that's what we call our page flip. So that's native to the Crestron solutions, and that's what makes us quite unique. And then again, in these larger rooms, the ability to have multiple touch panels, so up to 2 touch panels connected to the same MTR solution or Intel Nook. And then you can have one at the front of the room, one at the back of the room, for example, because they're on the network. They're streaming the display over there, and they're mirrored. So if you make a change in one, it updates on the other. So that's a quick overview of what we have sort of within the Crestron Microsoft Teams room. And we'll now move on to a look into what the device is and see what else.
So one of the I want to point out about the the MTR solution. A lot of people sort of say, "Hey, can I use brand X of a camera? Can I use brand Z of an audio solution?" Crestron ships the Mercury system, we ship the soundbar system, and those really are rooms in a box where you get everything that you need to come out of the box. You get every cable, you get the audio device, you get the video device. But then we have our custom integrator kits, which are our C series, and that's meant to pair with other devices. This is a partnership, and 100% Microsoft does not want any device to sort of that. That's why they go through a sophisticated series of tests that happen in labs, that happen with manufacturers, that happen in partnership with Microsoft, the lab, and the manufacturer themselves. And they go through and they say, does it work with Teams? And you want to stick with what's certified. And one of the reasons I can give you sort of quickly, I don't know how I'm doing. I can't see Rich and Jason holding up the sign for Jimmy move on yet. But the truth
You're
is,
good, Jimmy. You're good.
You want to sort of stick with these certified solutions. And the real overview is because like the call that we're on right now, a lot of the audio processing doesn't happen inside of the room. It happens up in the cloud. And if you don't have a certified device, the cloud doesn't know actually how to handle that audio. When you've got a certified device, there's information that's passed from the device up to the cloud that says, this is how to handle the audio in this call. And if it's an uncertified device, all of your audio processing is not going to happen locally inside of that room. So a lot of people like to set up the DSPs and sort of say, okay, it sounds great. And then they join a Teams call, Graham, and they can't hear anything. And it's because they have something that's not certified. So you've got an echo cancellation and echo cancellation. You've got gain control. You've got everything happening on that device that sits inside of the room. But because it's not a certified device, the cloud doesn't know that. And the cloud goes, oh, I have to add gain control. I have to add echo cancellation. And when that happens, we all know it phases each other out and you hear nothing. Now, it may work today, and then tomorrow you get that changed. With certified devices, you know that it's telling the cloud, I know how to handle this device, and please just set your settings to what I'm telling you to set.
I think just to add on there, obviously Microsoft Teams is cloud-based, just like we're on the platform now, it's cloud-based. They change, and they change quickly. It's not an on-premises server you upgrade once a year or twice a year with a service pack. These are changing weekly, hourly, daily, whenever they feel like it, when they need to add a patch or make a change. So just because it works today, it may not work tomorrow. So we've got a poll coming up now, go on.
Yeah, let's talk about managing these. So we're going to show you 4 different services that actually manage these devices. We're going to go through and we're going to talk about sort of what management on MTRs is. But before we do, I want to sort of, Graham and I wanted to sort of get your thoughts about this. So to manage a Crestron MTR system, you would need Windows Update. You would need the Windows Store Update. You would need XIO Cloud, System Center, and Team Center. The idea here is we want to sort of test your knowledge of, do I need all 5 of these? Now, we're going to go into this and we're going to explain it, but we wanted to sort of hit a little bit of a precursor to see where we were getting information from people out there and see sort of where they sit inside of their knowledge base before we go through it to see how much time we should spend on this. So, Rich, you want to bring that up and we'll see the results?
Yeah, the poll is running right now. Jimmy, let it run for about another 10, 15 seconds so we can get a nice broad swath of answers.
We'll talk about Windows
we'll let
Update.
that go through.
Yeah, we'll start with Windows Update. While the poll is going, Graham, we can talk about Windows Update because obviously we told everybody it was built on Windows 10.
And yeah, so Windows 10 IoT Enterprise is actually what the foundation of the platform is. The earlier generation room systems were built on Windows 10 Enterprise. All the latest generation of MTRs are built on the new IoT platform. However, it's got the same Windows Update as your desktop, as your laptop. They're in the same ring. That's what Microsoft call their updates. They put it in different rings and different features, but the Windows 10 on these devices get the same updates as they come out. So Patch Tuesday, etc., they get the same updates as your laptop and desktop would. And there's actually lots of ways people can manage Windows updates, and we'll touch on some of these in a few minutes. But yeah, every enterprise does things differently. There's some people will have different ideas, and again, when you look at who manages the updates, there could be different people involved. Some might be outsourced, some might be insourced.
Great. And gentlemen, we have the polling results. The answer, the true or false question was, do I need all of the following services to maintain and manage Crestron MTR systems? 67% of your audience said, no, you don't. And 33% of your audience said, yes, you do.
Good.
So
good.
gentlemen, help them understand what the best way to operate is.
Yeah, we can clear that up. And one of the reasons why we did that poll was just to see. So the correct answer to that is actually false. You don't need all 5. You need certain applications to go ahead and update. Remember, Graham, I was talking about the PRD, the product reference design that actually Microsoft puts out. And when they put out that PRD, that says inside of the PRD for MTR systems, all, including the USB devices, must be Windows Update compatible. And that means that when an update comes down and is pushed down via Windows Update, those devices have to be able to accept those updates, and they have to be able to sort of update themselves via this delivery mechanism. And that's the first piece. That is going to be critical to your systems. Now, Graham, we've also had people that say, hey, I want to sort of sit here and if it's not broke, I don't want to fix it. Okay.
Why touch it? Why break it?
If your customer is fine with the way that things work today and they don't want to update it, they don't have to update it. But remember, this is Windows Update. So you're going to get patches, what used to be called Patch Tuesday for Windows Defender, for all of the different services that live inside of the system, even drivers and BIOS updates and things like that. Those are part of your Windows Update. So there's two schools of thought here. Number one, I leave it. I don't want to update it. I can do that. Number two, let's let it go through the public update. Number three, let's manage it like I manage my PCs. If your customer manages their PCs, they go ahead and they have a schedule where they roll out updates. And these devices can fit into that schedule as well.
There's some caveats.
Yes.
And then we have the actual application itself that sits on there. So we've talked about the actual Windows OS. You then have the Microsoft Teams Room application that sits on top. And this is delivered via the Microsoft Store. So many of you have seen a little basket maybe in your taskbar, the Microsoft Store. That's how Microsoft push out the MTR application to the devices, and that's how it's kept up to date. So it's critical, again, if you want to stay current, like you do on your cell phone, you have all your apps or maybe automatically updating. You want to do the same with that. So you've got the latest features in the MTR.
And Graham, the Windows Store is always the last piece that people don't think about. And it's because a lot of corporations or a lot of enterprises don't want somebody like me downloading Candy Crush on their PC and allowing that to come in. So they block the Windows Store update. And while they get their Windows updates, if they don't get the Store update, they don't get the latest app from Microsoft Teams Room, which is the overlay that you actually see, which is what's put in front of the customer, which is actually delivering you the latest and greatest features. So it's important to understand the UC engine will grab its Windows update from both the Windows update mechanism and the store. And those are key to understand if you're going into an enterprise and have a conversation with the IT staff to say, yeah, I need both of these. I don't just need one, I need both of these. Or if you're having that conversation of how do I control these, you have to control both of those.
Exactly. So you've got these two options here for those updates. You've got the Windows Update and the Windows Store. But the good thing is you can manage those both deliverables through the middle here in Microsoft Intune or System Center, depending what platform you're using. So whether you're using System Center on premises or you're using Intune in the cloud, that can manage your Windows platform and obviously control your updates. And we'll talk about domain joining considerations further down. When you do integrate it to your network, there are some certain considerations you must make there because it's not just like your laptop. It's not another desktop. It's an appliance in the room. So it needs to be treated like that. Again, you don't want to have a log on screen when you come to the conference room at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning. You want it logged in, ready to hit that join button.
And Graham, let's go back to the poll where 33% actually said that they needed all of these. So the first two, I would agree. Those are probably needed, and those are 90% use case. These three here, these three are optional. They're not necessarily needed for your Microsoft Teams Room systems, although they do add value. Crestron XIO Cloud. Let's say you've got scheduling panels. You've got sort of air medias all over your campus and everything else. These can come into XIO Cloud, and now you've got a single pane of glass for all of your Crestron room systems. But again, your update delivery is going to be through Windows Update. But maybe you want to know the status of things, and XIO Cloud fits into your management inside of your enterprise. That's where XIO Cloud will add value to it. Microsoft Intune, again, if a customer's got a whole bunch of PCs out there and they want to manage these things through Intune, and they've got a whole solution that they've set up, you can do it. System Center for updates, that's where people will not use the Windows public update, but they'll actually use System Center to manage their Windows platform. That's how they control their updates and their rollouts. There's not an administrator in the world that has a large deployment that will just leave it up to a user and say, yeah, you're going to go through public updates and it's your responsibility to update. Anybody that's managing PCs will actually have things on the domain, and they'll know when updates are available. They will push them out. Any critical updates, they will push them out through the domain, and that's through System Center. So if that's a requirement inside of the organization, these fit right into it. And the Teams Admin Center. This is new, and I know, Graham, you've actually seen some of this on the tap ring already. So why don't you go ahead and tell us about the Teams Admin Center?
Sure. So Teams Admin Center, originally, obviously, it was set up and designed to manage the users, manage the policies of Microsoft Teams. And then soon they added in the ability to manage the phone devices. And now they've added the ability to manage the new collaboration bars. What also is coming, and it's in the final stages of testing, and what Microsoft call their TAP, their Technology Adoption Program, is the ability to manage the Microsoft Teams rooms. So any vendor of MTR will be shown up in the device. And what it gives you is the ability to see that device, reboot it, grab the logs, see the status. And one of the new things is the status or status of the peripherals. So anything attached to it to make sure they're online, your displays are online. So it's your complete snapshot of what's happening in that room and that device. So it's coming out very shortly. It's in, let's say, revision 1. And again, more updates will come through it.
And this is actually different. So Microsoft actually has, the Microsoft Managed Room pilot program as well. And this is a little bit different. So the Teams Admin Center will give you that pane of glass. This is where all of the administration of Teams, meaning the user administration, the sort of authentication side. This is the administrator that administrates Teams for an organization. They're going to be able to see these devices inside of that screen itself. So the idea is, like we sort of pointed out earlier, this fits right into that digital workflow. And if a customer has Teams, these systems are vital to their sort of adoption and moving their sort of personal space into a conference room space, because the users don't get confused from one to the other.
Yeah. And what we want to do now is really just touch on Windows updates again, because it's a very critical thing. With the Microsoft Teams room, Microsoft will certify a build of Windows. So Windows has a 4-digit build code, and any MTR systems that we have shipped recently are on what we call Microsoft Windows 1803. And then Microsoft needs to certify the next one. So when the desktop team release a new version, your laptop might get a new version. Your Teams room will not, because Microsoft Teams room group, they need to test it and certify it and make sure it doesn't break the MTR app, because there's doing a lot of things in the background to make it in a secure appliance. So Microsoft will not certify that new version. And I think it's roughly about a 6-month delay from what you may have on your laptop to what you'll see in your conference room. So for example, the current certified build today is Windows 1903. And actually Microsoft are about to roll out build 2004 to your desktop. And in the middle, you have 1909. And what sometimes, again, Microsoft will do is leapfrog and miss out one in the middle. Because they're working together, they may be working on a future one. So the idea is you don't force out a build. So, through System Center, which is also known as SCCM, you don't force out a new build. Just because your laptops get it, your MTR mustn't get it. And again, like we said before, it might work today, it may not work tomorrow. That app gets updated, it may not sign in and work if you've got a different Windows backend. So on the system, every night, this is, again, Microsoft design, there's a script that runs nightly. and this will manage all the updates. So it'll go and check, is there any Windows Defender updates? Is there any application updates for the OS? Is there any MTR apps from the store? And again, if it's a Crestron system, is there any updates from the Crestron for the drivers? And any peripherals that are connected. So it does that check every night and then force a reboot. So you don't really have to touch it. And at the bottom there, we have a reference linking to the room support and the versions that are available now.
I was going to say, Graham, you said a lot of numbers there. You said a lot of different places to look and everything else. Don't worry, guys. If you're not sort of up to date, we've got the links in here so that you guys know where to go to. This isn't just a blind, hey, let's go ahead and have Jimmy and Graham sort of put out some numbers out there. These are all documented on Microsoft's site, and they're out there. One of the places that we're going to actually have in here is what Graham and I sort of call the Bible of where we go to, and that's the Teams room system itself. So this is sort of important. This is an important screen to sort of look at. And this is the screen that your users are presented with when coming into a room. And one of the things to sort of point out here, and Graham, if you see it on the top, welcome to Crestron Flex, you see there's a little S in the upper right-hand corner of that above the join button. And then there's a little T right above the welcome to Crestron Flex on the bottom there. Why don't you go ahead and tell us what the difference is?
So I think we alluded to a little bit earlier. These are dual-headed devices. So they are running Skype and Teams under the covers. So originally they were Skype Room Systems version 2 when they were first released. And then obviously Microsoft layered the Microsoft Teams application into it as well. So some of you who have deployed them a while back, you would have seen a different interface where you could customize the wallpaper with the bluey purple color as the splash screen. Microsoft have now moved to this flat design with just the black and white and some colors for your meetings. And this means that, you know, if you are in this transition from Skype to Teams, you can still run both on this system. So like my system here, I can send it 2 invites. And for the user, they don't need to know if it's a Skype meeting or a Teams meeting. They do that one-touch join. They just click that button and they join that meeting. And so it's, again, brings back simplicity and no config options. So when we do talk about how do we set it up, how do we enable it for Skype and Teams, that's part of the out-of-box experience. So when you set up the system, you get a choice on what you want to do. How do you want to use it? And this is something you need to obviously question your clients when you're going out to deploy the Crestron Flex systems. Is, you know, what mode do you want to use it in? And if we jump to the next slide, Jimmy, we'll actually show the attendees what this actually looks like.
One more thing before we say this, Graham. You and I both know there is not an organization in the world that is running Skype for Business today and running Teams tomorrow. That transition happens over a very long period of time. And it is something that, although I've heard stories that people actually transition over a weekend. There was one weekend, you know, during this that I think somebody transitioned 45,000 users of an organization from Skype over to Teams. But we know that that happens slowly. And these are purpose-built machines for that transition. So while your users are still on Skype, they're not sacrificing their conference room. When you send it the Skype invite, it takes the Skype invite and it joins that Skype call. When you send it the Teams invite, it goes ahead and it takes that Teams invite and it joins via Teams. Microsoft themselves, I think it took nine months for them to transition all of their own employees over from Skype to Teams. And this is part of what that PRD was these devices always have to basically accept both modes. They do join in that native mode, but 100% both modes are supported. So Graham, tell us about the setup that we have here and what's in that bottom right side.
So yeah, what we have is, again, some enterprises, again, for security, they may not gain Teams. They want to have everything on premise within their boundary. So in that case, you would select Skype for Business only. And again, if you allow federation, it can then break out and talk to other people. So that's the Microsoft term for outbound connections, should we say, is the federation with other organizations. So that will work with Skype, Skype for Business Server. And if you've got Skype for Business Server, which was released in 2015, as Jimmy showed earlier, and then you can go to Server 2019. So again, some people who want to keep everything within their network, within their boundary, can still use a Microsoft Teams room, an MTR. if you are transitioning from one to the other, you then select which mode, what primary mode, what are most of your calls. And that is only key when you hit a new meeting button. Obviously, with the join button, it makes it super simple. You just tap that button. But when you want to do a new meeting or start a meeting, that's where it's slightly different. And that's where, in that previous slide, you choose which default you want, Teams or Skype, as your primary. But it can do both. And actually, one thing is when you have it in Skype for business only mode, you'll then never see your device in the Teams Admin Center when it becomes available. So this is what it looks like. When you have it in Teams default mode, you get this slightly bluey purple pane on the left-hand side. And when you start searching for someone, you're searching for someone in your Teams directory, your Azure Active Directory. Then you will find them, and then you can also search externally if you've got that feature enabled. In the bottom left, we have enter a URI. And what this means is when you tap that button, it will then shift to the image on the right-hand side. So it'll have this more bluey color. And that means you're actually going to utilize the Skype for Business components under the hood. So you can then dial that user that you know that are Skype only, and you need to dial that SIP URI. So again, Skype and Teams have two different protocols. They actually operate very differently. So if you remember, Skype client, that was a full-featured client. Teams client is actually built differently to what Skype is.
But it is using those native protocols to actually connect. So, Rich, I think we wanted to throw up a poll here to sort of ask people a question.
We do, Jimmy. We're going to ask, what type of call can a Crestron MTR system join? It is a multiple choice question, so you can choose several different answers if you'd like.
And again, we told you some of the screens that you could see before. So we want to sort of poll and see where people are in their knowledge of the Teams room systems, and sort of get ahead of it and say which ones can these join. It's kind of funny that Cisco WebEx is there too. But we'll see where you guys think these things can join, because we showed you the screens before, but we have some surprises for you that I don't know that everybody's going to know, Graham.
That's the thing of it. As I mentioned, it has Skype for Business under the hood, and that's using the Skype for Business protocols, which was very different to how Microsoft have built the Teams protocols. So there could be some features in there that you could utilize maybe the Skype side for.
And it might not have even been in the PRD.
Yeah, but it just works.
Because that's sort of the way that Microsoft sort of designs these things, is they're constantly getting software updates and they're constantly getting things. So some features that you might not think of today or we haven't presented yet, next year, these could look a lot newer, a lot more adaptable to environments that we might not have even thought of. So why don't we go ahead and take that poll, Rich, and see what people think.
So Jimmy, it was an interesting poll. What types of call can a Crestron MTR join? 71% believe it's Skype for Business and Microsoft Teams. 50% said just Microsoft Teams. 45% said Skype for Business. 21% said Zoom. 5% said Cisco WebEx. And 26% said all of the above. That's a pretty good broad statement, Jimmy. What do you think about that?
That's interesting. We did present Skype for Business and Microsoft Teams, so I'm not surprised that they chose that as their number one answer. Those that only chose Skype, remember it can join Skype and Microsoft Teams. So that might have been the proper answer. But the proper answer here is what, Graham?
Well, if anyone was listening to some Microsoft announcements back since November when it was publicly launched, it's actually all of the above. So there's a feature that Microsoft announced was guest join access, and this is a feature they're going to start developing, and it was meant to start when were we? In March, actually.
Graham, you see the logos that are on the left hand side of that screen, right? That's the key to point out to people. So remember, we showed you the Skype logo that was on there, and you'll notice that middle logo is actually the Teams logo. Up in the top, you see that there's a Zoom logo, and in the bottom, you see that there's a WebEx logo. Graham is sort of alluding to this. This is what they're calling guest join access, and guest join access allows the system to be invited to a WebEx meeting, And the system understands that it's a WebEx meeting because Microsoft and Cisco have actually joined forces, and there's no need to sort of bridge those anymore when you've got an MTR system. The MTR system knows how to join that WebEx meeting. And the same goes for Zoom. Microsoft sort of did something that that was revolutionary. We've been telling you guys this is built on Windows 10, and one of the key features in a Windows 10 is a browser. So the technology exists that these can actually join, and it is a browser-based setup. There's nothing for the user to do. This is, again, a software update that will be coming down. Graham, you were saying it's coming out relatively soon. Do you know when it's coming out?
Yeah, I can't give dates out. I'm under NDA on the chat program, but it is going to come out. Obviously, it was due probably round about now. We missed Enterprise Connect. It was going to probably be a big launch there. We didn't have that. Obviously, the world issues hit us, and obviously development stopped on Zoom, for example. So they publicly announced we're not doing any new R&D for 90 days. So we're focusing on, keeping the platform stable and alive, just like Cisco were with their WebEx platform. And obviously Microsoft were working on Teams a lot. And so 90 days, we're looking at July. So that's probably when, I'm guessing when it may start, coming out to test, because, Microsoft demonstrated this in November. So some of the components are there. Obviously need to iron out some things to make it, as slick as possible and, great user interface for everyone. And, so we're looking at probably July time before I reckon they sort of start testing. And Microsoft's public or partner show is called Microsoft Inspire, and that's usually in July. So I reckon I'm going to, we will see something announced around that time frame on when it will be available. But and again,
Graham,
there's some...
the 22% that actually answered that question, kudos to you guys. Graham and I do presentations, and we're going to show you guys what we're going to give you guys a sort of a place that Graham and I do a monthly event. And we just did the guest join access. We did a deep dive into guest join access last month. And a lot of people that joined us on there were actually surprised that it can do it. So it's not something that I think a lot of people understand or a lot of people know, but I think it's going to be a huge feature that is in the MTR solutions that's going to help everybody, because we all know if you're a WebEx house and now you want to switch to Teams, there's always that challenge, and there's always that time frame that you need to actually switch infrastructure and servers and even DNS settings and so on and so forth. And now this allows you to actually change and have that transition period the same way that they're going from Skype to Teams. Now, if you're going from WebEx over to Teams, you have that transition as well.
And probably just to finish on this sort of slide is, this is for Microsoft Teams rooms. You mentioned earlier, Jimmy, about the collaboration bars. Again, this is a feature that's not coming to that yet. They were only launched in November as well. They're new devices. This is being focused on the Microsoft Teams room because they have the ability to do a browser-based call using WebRTC technology for the video, and it will be available on the MTRs to start with. So if we look at licensing, we touched on actually some ways on how you can use Skype on the platform. You can use Teams. What you can also obviously use is, as you mentioned, is Intune to manage the device, and Intune requires a license. So what Microsoft did was develop a meeting room license. Originally, people were using, what Microsoft called an Enterprise 3 or E3 or E5 license. That included these features of Skype, Teams, Intune, etc. However, you didn't need Word and Excel in these devices, so you're actually overpaying for these licenses. So Microsoft developed this meeting room license, and it, depending on your tenant, you go in and you can get your Office 365 admin to subscribe to X number of room licenses. And it's one per room. So one per device. Wherever you have a Microsoft Teams room, you will apply that license to it. But it also includes the calendaring part. That's a resource account in Exchange. So you don't see Exchange listed there because it's using a room resource account, which is free of charge on the Microsoft platform.
But that's key, Graham, because these systems, they need to be licensed. The account inside of the meeting room does need to be licensed. Your system will not sign in without a license, but you don't need that highly coveted E5 license, which has everything inside of it. You need just the meeting room itself. And the reason why is because those rooms aren't going to use Word. They're not going to use Excel. So Microsoft actually valued these devices, and they said, okay, we're going to charge a lesser monthly fee for these than we would a regular user that's going to use all of our services.
Indeed, yeah. And again, what I've seen a lot in the field is, you maybe ask the customer is, hey, can you set me up a license for my MTR? We're going to come and install it next week. And I say, yeah, it's done. Great. So one thing to do to check on that is just hop over to this hyperlink, portal.office.com, and use these credentials to log in and see what license. So on the left-hand side, we can see the meeting room has a license under my subscription. And then on the right-hand side, if the administrator says, yeah, it's all done, it's all set up, you should be able to go and log in. You could spend hours trying to troubleshoot why it isn't logging in on the MTR console. If you just go and check here on the web, you'll see what license it has, and you know if it's able to sign in or not. So it gives you a quick check to do just to ensure that the right ones have been applied. And if the customer has chosen an E3 or an E5 or just license them individually, that's fine, as long as they're there. Because otherwise, as Jimmy said, it's got to sign in. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
And Graham, troubleshooting on an MTR is not always the easiest solution for
Most
it.
intuitive.
So, yeah, what I actually tend to do is I actually lower the MTR application, and I go into Windows setting mode, and I'll go to the URL that's on here, because again, inside of settings, you're going to have a browser, and I'll go and I'll set just sort of see, all right, does the account sign in? Is it subscribed? You're using the machine that's attempting to sign in on the MTR side. So it's a great little troubleshooting tip. Go to the browser itself and see if you can sign in from that browser. And again, if it does sign in, but your MTR is still not going in, you're going to want to go to this URL and just check the subscriptions more than likely. And this is nothing against anybody that's had this happen. I've done it myself. I sort of set up the account, I did everything, and then I didn't apply a license to it. And you sit there and you go, this isn't signing in. And an hour later, you launch the browser and you figure out, yeah, I forgot that. So it's something that we wanted to sort of address, because it is something that's common. It's not something that is sort of flighty. You definitely want to look at this and make sure that it's licensed.
Actually, probably another sort of bit of information on here to add to that. I went to help a customer set one up, and I had a purple bar across the top saying, can't sign into Skype. It was happily signing into Teams, and the customer's going, why isn't it working? We said to the guy, we need a Teams, account for it. So we did exactly that. Made him log in and look at the subscription. He had assigned a Teams account to it. He didn't assign a Skype account to it. And, to have these systems fully functional, you also need that Skype element assigned to it. And then that will take away the banner. If you want to leave the banner there and just do Teams meetings, unfortunately, there is no Teams only mode for these devices just yet. It's just not there. It needs some of the Skype elements still under the covers. So again, make sure that you check that license, and then you won't be spending hours troubleshooting.
And Graham, this is a key to troubleshooting as well. Create that cloud account as early as you can. Graham and I do actually proof of concepts with a lot of customers where we'll take systems out and we'll sort of put them on the table for 90 days where a customer gets to use these systems and they get to do them. The one thing that is a prerequisite is they have to create the accounts. I've been on site many times where the administrator says, oh, I'll just create an account now. And the truth is these are cloud accounts. And when they're cloud accounts, remember they have to replicate across a large amount of servers. And as work from home has been something that has sort of taken heed, those servers are under a little bit more stress than they were prior to everybody going to the office. So we've seen circumstances where it used to take a couple of hours. Now we're sort of recommending 48 hours to sort of go ahead and make that account. And that allows the account to populate across all the servers. If you are a person that's actually created accounts on-prem and you understand what has to happen for the on-prem, where you make your Skype account and then you go to your Exchange server and you make your Exchange account and then you link everything together and your AD is going through, that's all automatically done for you. But it's no different. The difference is it's just in the cloud. And so the tenant replication that has to happen takes a significant amount of time because it's doing all the scripts behind the scenes, and it's populating server number one, then server number two. You don't know which server you're going to actually authenticate to. So you just want to give it as much time as possible. Graham, I've been on site, and it's sometimes frustrating because it'll log in on a browser, and then you realize that the guy made it 5 minutes before he came to the conference room, and then it won't log in on the MTA.
I think the other point to note here is, again, in large enterprises, there might be 3 different administrators you need to talk to: the Teams admin, the Exchange admin, the Skype admin, the Windows admin. So there could be many people you need to talk to get the account created. And again, different time zones. Some might be in Europe, some might be in APAC, some might be in America. So you need to have all this information put together so they can create it as early as possible. So you're not stuck on site with a device that can't sign in.
That's frustrating. So we did mention before the Bible, the Microsoft Bible, and this, Graham and I live on this site. Everything that is related to a Microsoft Teams room system, an MTR. Remember, we said the Crestron Flex is an MTR. This has all of the documentation about how to plan, deploy, and manage these devices. You can see on the left-hand side, there's actually those 3 categories of plan, deploy, and manage. And this has a tremendous amount of information that's deep inside of here. You can download it as a PDF. It is an active document, which means I think even as late as today, Graham, some of this was actually updated. But there's as they add features, as they add things, and they come across things and they say, oh, well, now we can do this. Those features are added here. Something as simple as even whiteboard or proximity join. Those are features that basically the whiteboard application actually has some math that you have to do to figure out how far away the camera should be for the proper whiteboard space. Those calculations, they're found here. The proximity join, what to actually enable, the fact that you need Bluetooth, all of those are actually on this document itself. So it is a living, breathing document. All MTR partners should be pointing people back to this site because it is the basis of what everything is built on.
And also just on the left-hand side, you've got that little search box filtered by title. And that's where you'll search for something, a keyword maybe like whiteboard or version support, hybrid. So if you're doing a deployment and you want to learn how to set the accounts up, it's all in this documentation. So how do we create an account? The way you can do this is in mainly 2 different ways. You can use the Office 365 Admin Center. So the Admin Center is your sort of dashboard where you go to control the users, create Teams users, create Exchange. There's also the Skype as well. So you can use there. However, you might miss something out, or the person you've asked to create this site might miss something out. One of the preferred ways of doing things is actually using PowerShell. So you can actually preload your PowerShell script, again, cut and paste it out of the Microsoft documentation and populate that detail in your own PowerShell window. And that way you can ensure that you've got all the steps covered to get a successful account working. So what does it look like? So when you have PowerShell, you need to install some modules, and you need to connect to the cloud services or maybe your on-premise services. So depending on whether you're doing a hybrid deployment or you're doing fully cloud, you need to install the modules for Exchange and Skype and Active Directory, so you can talk to the cloud, put in your credentials, and then, for example, down the bottom, you see your meeting room variables. So if you're doing multiple accounts, you can quickly then create multiple accounts very quickly by using PowerShell and repeating the steps. The other thing with PowerShell is it's a great way you can step through and spot any errors. So you can do line by line to make sure you've hit all the right points and it's successfully applied in the cloud. So then if you jump to the next slide, Jimmy, once you've created your account, you can then add some advanced features to these accounts. So for example, you want to send a reply or automatic reply. Once you've invited the room, you can send that user back a message saying, this is a Microsoft Teams enabled room. Enjoy your video meeting, or whatever you want to put in that message. So people know they've booked a room with video. So this is where you configure a lot of things. Again, some of this can be done in the Exchange Admin Center within the Office 365 portal. But again, some of these features are only available through PowerShell. They're not published in the GUI from Microsoft at the front end. And again, what you can also do from here is actually get the settings. So again, this could be another check. you go to the portal, like we've shown before. You go and check the website; it's got the right license. But you can also then go and check the settings through PowerShell to make sure it's been set up correctly. Again, it helps troubleshoot. You do a message on the PowerShell. Again, the customer will probably do this. You can sit and watch them and find out exactly what has been set on there.
And Graham, it's generally the administrator who's actually creating the account inside of the organization. Many times, you're a Crestron dealer, you're a Crestron integrator. You're not doing this, but you should understand how these things are made and how to actually help the customer if they have questions. These scripts, remember we showed you the Bible before? These scripts are actually on that site as well. And they're available for you to sort of download and look at. So if you guys have PowerShell, knowledge and you have the ability to actually create a 30-day tenant, and that's something to point out too, Graham. I know that I do it a lot where I'll create a free tenant. Microsoft has the ability to create your own free tenant for 30 days free of charge. You can get phone numbers, you can get everything through there, and a lot of times free licenses. What I do is I go ahead and I spin up a tenant and I test things and I make sure that things work if I have a question about things. And we encourage you guys to actually take some of these tools and sort of go forward with them. But most of the time when you're on an enterprise, it's the administrator who's actually creating the account. And they have some knowledge to it. I can't say that everybody does. Some administrators like PowerShell, other ones will like the GUI of the O365 interface because they don't want to deep dive into PowerShell or they don't understand it. But there's tools for each person, and you have to understand what these tools are actually for.
So actually within the Masters program, for certified programmers, there'll be a PowerShell course later on. And anyone actually can review the one from last year. So again, Crestron will give an overview to PowerShell because it's used in other things as well. So you can, again, visit these links later on, have a look at last year's program, and then maybe sign up if you're a certified programmer to the one coming soon.
All right. My dial pad, Graham.
Where's it gone?
This one is a little bit crazy. So, so what you'll see sometimes when you come into a Microsoft Teams room, for you guys who are Crestron programmers, think of this as something in VT Pro that says, "Hey, if it's there, I want to see it." It's a visibility join. If this is activated, I want to see it. If it's not there, let's go ahead and hide it. But voice is something that inside of the Teams room is an optional feature. When you send an invite to the room, and it's a Skype invite, for example, it uses your Skype meeting information. It's not using the room's information to actually start that meeting. The room is a participant in that meeting, meaning that you sent it the Skype invitation, so it's going to use your invite credential, your invite URL. The same thing goes for Teams. Now, what that means is that if a user wants to actually dial out of the conference room, meaning that they're going to go outside of the Teams call and they want to actually make a phone call or something like that, yes, you have to apply a voice license to this device for that dial pad to actually show up. You can have direct routing, you can have a whole bunch of different options, but the dial pad will only show up when you've actually got a voice plan assigned to it.
So yeah, just to finalize on that piece, so, when you join a meeting, you click that join button. Jimmy's organized that meeting. I walk in the room and I'm joining Jimmy's meeting from the device. I may have dial information from Jimmy's instructions from his invite, but if I want to add someone on their cell phone, so going back to that meeting room license, it also includes audio conferencing, which means I can dial out when I'm in the meeting from that device. The dial pad button here means I want to walk in the meeting room and dial someone's cell phone. That's where the enterprise voice piece comes in. And I'm not sure how many people are walking into a conference room and dialing someone directly nowadays. We're all joining meetings.
I've also had the request from other people, which I don't understand, but the conference room needs to have a phone number assigned to it so that people can dial into the conference room. I know that the 90-something% use case is dialing out, but I know there are some administrators that have the requirement that people need to dial into it. And if you need to dial into it, you're going to need to assign it a voice license as well. Yep. It always will take that Teams meeting and everything else. But if there's a cell phone has to be able to dial this room, then yeah, you need a voice license for it as well. Is this poll?
Whole time.
It's poll time. How
questions.
exciting. I
Poll
love poll
time.
time. So poll time. Should I install other applications on the UC engine? And while people are answering the poll, guys, I'd like to go through some of the questions that people are asking. And maybe you might have a little bit of time here, because I know you're going to cover more about cloud video interop later on in the session. But they are asking lots of questions about how that's going to work. Does it only allow for, let's say, Microsoft Edge browser? Can you use Chrome or Firefox? If you join from other applications, are you going to lose the features that those applications have when you do a native meeting? So there's a lot of questions about that, and I presume you're going to cover some of it later on, but let's talk about a little bit of it now, because you've introduced the whole concept. And I would start off with, do you need to use a specific browser for guest join access?
Well, that's where these systems are purpose-built and designed. So you don't have to worry about the browser yourself. There's a single touch join. You just have to understand that for a Zoom call or for a WebEx call, you're going to get that browser-based experience. So for instance, WebEx has your, let's just take it for instance, and I'll give you the scenario. You're at your PC and you don't have WebEx installed on your PC. How do you actually join that WebEx call? Well, I launch a browser, because I have a URL that's inside of that invite. I launch a browser and then I join from my PC using that browser. This MTR is doing the same exact thing, except that you don't have to worry about actually doing it yourself. It's all done for you. But that experience that you're going to get is identical to what you're getting when you join on a browser on your PC. Grant, did I do that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. You know, you don't need to touch it. Again, the guest join access feature with browser-based technology, you don't need to worry about it. As an administrator, it just, you know, it will come down in the app update, should we say, and Microsoft will take care of that.
I think by saying browser-based, we sort of gave the wrong impression. So the idea is we wanted to say the technology that's used there, and it's actually WebRTC, to give you guys a deep dive on it. The idea is that all of these applications, whether it's Zoom, whether it's Teams, whether it's WebEx, they're all using what's called WebRTC as their browser-based joining, because that's the standard that happens. It's basically something that's very, very popular. So for instance, if Microsoft and Cisco decide down the line, oh, well, we don't want to sort of share how we're doing this anymore, WebEx is going to have the option of saying, well, we don't want a browser-based join anymore. Because if they do that on your PC, if they do that for the MTR, then it's not going to work on your PC anymore. So this is sort of coming in a common protocol that's there for all of these applications, and Microsoft is taking advantage of that. Now, they are directly working with Cisco and Zoom as the first two partners, but I know that from conversations that I've had, there's a lot more partners to come. And the idea that this is just a guest join access, they're going to expand on this. They want to start rolling out. I think it's Cisco that's actually coming first, and then Zoom comes next, is my understanding. 1 month WebEx comes, and then the next month Zoom will come. But they're going to start adding more partners as well. Once they have that platform down and they have the understanding of what sort of was needed for engineering, and oh, well, this happens and that happens, they're going to bring in more partners. So it's something I think you guys are really going to like. There is no browser that you guys have to worry about. It's all done for you automatically on the MTR solution itself.
Great. So Jimmy, I think we'll cover these results of this poll a little bit later on. So why don't we go ahead and discuss, should I join the MTR to the domain?
Graham, you want to take this one?
Yeah, so a very common question. You know, we talked about the device earlier and how you manage it, say with Intune, System Center, how you manage your Windows updates. So one of the easy things to do is I'll put it on my network, and I will then inherit all my policies that my laptops get, my other devices might get, you know, the servers and everything else.
Let's explain what domain joining is, because I don't think we can take it for granted that everybody on this call understands what domain joining is. So domain joining really sort of comes down to, I've got thousands of PCs because all of my users, or even I'm a small business and I might only have 5 PCs to manage, but you don't want to manage 5 PCs. you want to manage as little as possible. So what you do is you actually create a domain, and that domain is something that all 5 of those PCs join. And when those 5 PCs join, they're going to actually adopt what's called policy, and it's called group policy, GPOs. So there's group policy that comes down, and those policies say things like, oh, a user should always have a password, or your power settings should be like this, or your screensaver should be X, or so on and so forth. There's so many. Everything that is an option on a PC has the availability of actually being something that can be pushed down via policy. So these policies are very, very intricate, and they're basically designed so that when thousands of people are on the network, I don't have to worry about, are you up to date on your antivirus, or are you up to date on your Teams solution, or hey, does Teams auto start on your PC, or power management even that lives on the PC. So that's what's happening when you join a domain, and we always get the question, Graham and I, about, should I join these units to the domain? So Graham, take it from here. Tell us about the OUs and how those actually come into play as well.
So yeah, a lot of people will create a folder. Think of an organizational unit as a folder. So whether that's a theater, i.e. Americas, EMEA, APAC, and then they'll put maybe offices in there. So that's an organizational unit. And what you don't want to do is put a Microsoft Teams room in a generic OU. The problem is it will then inherit the policies from your top layer group policy. So the whole idea is that you create a separate unit, a separate folder, and it's allowed to do things like auto start the system. So, Jimmy, you've written a great post on, why you mustn't touch the Skype account on there. There is an admin account on there, but certainly when you domain join a device, it can then use your admin credentials to log in to the Windows side of things. However, again, you must never touch that Skype app, because that auto logs in. Again, as I mentioned earlier, every night the system reboots. You don't want to walk in the conference room and have to sign in and find out what someone's password is for that room resource that's 25 characters, and IT has a workflow that takes 3 weeks to answer. It must be able to log in all the time without being touched. And a key one, again, is power management of the screens, not shutting them down. You want to be able to walk in the room and have the screens wake up when you need it. So again, there's a very good documentation from Microsoft on the configuration and the requirements on the group policy for the Teams rooms. And again, one question you could ask yourself, if you are all Office 365, everything in the cloud, why do I need this on the inside of my network? Do I need to put it in my network? Do I need to domain join it? Why don't I just leave it talking to the cloud and get its updates from there? There's many different conversations that you can have over many beers to discuss the do's and don'ts of domain joining.
So Graham, when people ask us, because we get pulled into the conference room a lot with the administrators, and they say, I want to domain join it. My general recommendation is, I don't think you need to domain join it, but if you do, you should follow everything that's on this document. And this goes back to the Bible that we were talking about. This is actually a subsection that's in the Bible of saying, if you do domain join it, like Graham said, make its own OU that's free of group policy, GPO, and then you go ahead and manage these systems as their own devices, because they are purpose built. And remember, users are not logging into these. They're not sort of bringing up a Word folder, or they're not browsing the internet and sort of bringing down programs. These are purpose built machines that just launched that Skype or MTR app and is used in that fashion. So they're not your typical PC, although they can be managed like that.
So now let's talk about what it looks like on the network. So like most of us now, and we can look back at the polls, we've been using Teams already. So most likely you will have your firewall configured to allow Teams traffic to access the Microsoft servers. So Microsoft have a range of subnets, and we've put the link down the bottom there, that if you want to whitelist your servers or your proxy servers to allow traffic outbound, Microsoft, again, regularly update this list of IP addresses that hosts all their Azure subnets. So when the Teams room goes and logs in, it's going to go and log in across these ports of 443 and UDP for the media. And then optionally, if you are running XIO Cloud, again, that uses port 443 if you want to do that management piece.
But one thing to point out, Graham, remember we told everybody that you don't sell these into people that don't have Teams or Skype. There's not a separate requirement that is actually used for these MTRs. If your organization is actually using Teams and it's working, these are already there for you. There's not something separate that you have to do for it. So it sort of works into that whole digital workflow, like we said. If your organization is using Teams and using Skype, there's nothing separate for these conference rooms that sort of come into play.
So I think we've run the poll already. We've mentioned a few times, these are purpose-built machines or appliances, call them what you want. And we run this poll, and what should I install on them? Interesting results. I do like the last one, none of the above.
I think the 6% of all the above were sort of a little cheeky with us. But I think that sort of shows the right answer here is you can install all these. There's nothing
apart from BitTorrent server. Come on.
Yeah, I know. Nobody's ever going to do that. But the admin page and the admin that you're logging into allows you to actually install all these. And the biggest one is the first one that we actually have on there, antivirus and intrusion detection. Those two are always sort of a requirement of any organization that we walk into when there's a Windows 10 device. But the truth is, the way that these are architected and the way that these actually work, like we said, they're not downloading files. You're not opening things on them and everything else. So antivirus really doesn't do much for these machines, but if it makes that administrator feel like they need it and they say, oh, we can't do it without it, you can install it. The key thing to realize is that neither Crestron nor Microsoft are running tests under what an antivirus or something else is doing behind the scenes while that MTR application is going. So antivirus, intrusion detection, remote management tools, they all take service cycles in the background of Windows itself. So you are tasking the machine with doing things that really don't have much of a reason to be there, but you can install them.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a customer with 3 antiviruses on there. Don't forget, it comes with Windows Defender, and that's one of the highly ranked antivirus. In the Gartner Magic Quadrant, it's there on the top right. So, out of the box, it is secure. Again, we've had customers penetrate test them. If you are deploying them and your customer wants to test it, we encourage them to do that. But if they feel safer and they want to put extra tools on, test, and test.
Yeah. I generally sort of try to keep people away from doing that, but we have had success with other people that put it in and they test it and they say, okay, it works fine. Yes, I'd like to keep it on. Okay. If they do run into problems and they run into situations, support is going to ask you to run a system that does not have that on it to see if that's actually what's causing the issue. If they cannot reproduce it, if they can reproduce it without it, they'll have Microsoft and Crestron will fix it.
So next up, we talked about this briefly earlier about managing. How do we manage these devices? So upcoming, we have the Teams Admin Center. That will be available quite shortly, again, announced back in November. And this will allow you to apply configuration. So there's a number of ways you can apply configuration today. Either on the device directly, using remote PowerShell, uploading an XML file to the system with its config. But Microsoft have now, built the admin center to do all this remotely. So you've got a central source for all your data, just like all the rest of your team's data. So looking at call logs, looking at whether there's been network issues or bad call quality where someone's reported it, you'll find all that in the Teams admin center. What we have at Crestron is obviously the XIO Cloud. And this is really, as Jimmy talked about this earlier, when you've got a lot more Crestron components, maybe in the room, you've got scheduling, you've got air media, some other processors. This is where you can manage all that hardware and manage the firmware of those devices. So on your Mercury, your touch panels, for example, this is where you can manage the update. The Teams Admin Center is never going to see, well, maybe, I don't know, in my view, it's not going to control our Crestron firmware. That's for us to do and us to manage. So it gives you the ability to then see all that information and manage it from that side of things.
But remember that everything that surrounds an MTR, meaning the TSW or the Mercury or even the camera and the soundbar itself, they all have to be subjected to Windows updates. So they do get their firmware from there. Crestron XIO is a great complement, but I think you can see the left side and the right side are there to sort of show you there's a distinct difference between these two services, and they're both optional. You don't need to take advantage of one or the other, but they do have benefits to each one of these. And if you see the benefit for your customer that says, oh, well, I want to basically download the logs and I want to view the call stats and the history, we get that a lot inside of, will XIO Cloud sort of deliver me calling statistics? Well, there's no reason for XIO to develop that because it's there in the admin center already.
We don't touch the app side of things. Let's call it that way. The app is controlled by Microsoft, and hence all that stuff on the left-hand side. And probably just to also add on XIO is the ability to remote control the touch panel as well. So again, some unique features there.
Yeah, it's a nice add-on, but we get a lot of people that think that it's, oh, you have to put this in. There's an option to it, and it's not required.
So just a quick snapshot of what the Microsoft Teams Room Admin Center now looks like with the peripheral status. So this, again, will be coming soon. This was showcased back in November, being able to, see what's happening on all the devices, where they're connected, and then you can drill down, get the logs, reboot the devices, and then, look at any bad call quality from there. So a nice dashboard that will evolve over time as well.
It's got a lot of features. It's really nice to have the Power BI where you can actually dig down as deep as you want, or you can go as high level as you want. You see on the left-hand side, there's the devices category that fits in. But you see there is also the users, the meeting, the messaging policy, the policy packages, even the org-wide settings. This fits right into that administrator's dashboard. This is not something that's sort of spread out and, oh, there's an IT person and then there's an AV person, although there can be both maybe administrators inside of this this solution, but it's not something that's sort of separated. If you're an admin and you're inside of the Teams admin center, you're seeing all your phones, all your collaboration bars, and your team rooms inside of under the devices tab.
So a lot of people ask, how do we remotely manage these devices? You deploy them in your local office, in your remote offices, and maybe even at your home offices now. So the question is, how do I control some of these things? And we've covered a lot of these. And this table is from the Microsoft link down the bottom. A lot of features now will be coming to Teams Admin Center, which will cover all this off. It makes it much, much easier to do this, obviously with Teams Admin Center. So having that available to you as your tool set will enable you to, manage these devices much more effectively.
Here's the features that separate the collaboration bars really from the MTR solution. So the one big thing is always with these systems, the biggest kudos to this is the single touch join. You schedule a meeting. The room system is actually just a participant in the meeting, meaning that when you actually schedule this through Exchange, you go ahead and you add the room system as a participant. It picks up that meeting, and if there's an overlap, it will reject it. If it has available time for that, it will go ahead and accept it. And as Graham said, it will send you a reply. You can put in pictures of the room if you want to. You can put in wayfinding. You can put anything in that reply that you want to. But it's also got the proximity-based join. And Graham, I know, and Rich brought this up while we were sort of going through the class. A lot of the questions came in through systems about how would I have a no-touch experience outside of these rooms. And this is something that you can do. So you can see Graham's picture on the right-hand side, but below his picture, it actually says Flex Teams Room, join and add. Proximity-based join is based on Bluetooth. So if your laptop or your mobile device has Bluetooth technology, you can pop up and start a call, and it will say, do you want to join and add the room? Now, Graham, I know that when I join, one of the things that's always happened in the past is that annoying feedback loop where I've got my microphone on, I've got my speaker on. Well, when you go ahead and join and add this room, it knows that your PC should be muted both on the speaker and microphone so that you're not going to get that feedback loop. And the speaker and microphone on the room system are open. So it will automatically do that for you if you use this feature. So how do I sort of no touch join a room system? Here you go.
Proximity.
This is something that's there for you. It's available in all the MTRs. And it's something that I think some organizations may take as something to sort of move forward to and teach their users how to do this.
And probably just a note of caution, the Bluetooth is beaconed from the UC engine. So the wherever the UC engine is placed, obviously it needs to be quite close to there. So if you are centralizing your UC engines in big deployments, this feature won't be available. You need to have the MTR codec or the PC in the room so your device can pick it up. So we're nearly out of time, so let's speed up quickly.
Let's go through interoperability. I'm glad that we have, if you Google cloud video interop, you will find Graham's picture right at the top of the list. He is, from previous companies, one of the foremost experts on this topic in the world. So Graham, why don't you tell us about the cloud video interop?
When Microsoft developed Teams, they needed a way to allow others in. As I mentioned earlier, Skype uses different protocols. It could dial other systems. So if some systems had the Skype codec and they could dial each other from, say, your Cisco, Tamberg, Life-Size, Poly, whichever hardware devices, there was some interop. We moved to Teams and there was no interop available. So again, Microsoft did a PRD and said, okay, we're going to develop cloud video interop. And then put it out to partners. And originally, the 3 launch partners were BlueJeans, Pexip, and Polycom. So they all developed their own variations of the service. And it allows you to dial into your Teams meeting. So you have your native Microsoft Teams meeting, you walk into your MTR and you hit join. You may have the room in another building that's got a Cisco system. Again, these third-party services have one touch to join, one button to push, etc. They have that same technology as well. That will then route through their cloud service and bring you into that Teams meeting. So it's all about getting into the Teams meeting as simply as possible. And again, they have dial instructions when you create the account, or when you create the meeting, you get an extra 3 lines of code in your Outlook invite or your Teams invite to say, this is how you dial in. So it'll provide you with a SIP or H223 address, and now you can then dial into that Teams meeting with your existing systems. And it goes back to your point, Jimmy, about no one's going to rip and replace 100, 1,000 units overnight. You're going to have a phase migration. So this cloud video interop allows you to have this seamless transition and again, have that one-touch join experience.
Yeah, it's different from the guest join access, but it is something that's there. Remember, if a customer has a Cisco or Polycom system and they want to get to a Teams room system, Microsoft is not naive. They know that they have hardware that actually exists inside of conference rooms that people still need to amortize. They paid a lot of money for these things. Yeah. So it gives them the option to sort of come into Teams with the existing stuff. But they do say, this is just a temporary solution. You should be moving to the Microsoft Teams room solutions for the truth.
Because then you get the advantages of things like the whiteboard, Bluetooth proximity, etc., like that. So having a native solution, you get all the feature set.
Yep. Now, admin password, we'll touch on this real quick. There is an administration portion to the Flex systems. We do suggest that you change the password. We also want to make sure that you guys understand that password should never expire. You shouldn't leave the default passwords on these solutions. The idea is these are machines that are there. If you're joining the domain, you can use domain credentials. The local admin should be there. We strongly recommend that. We don't recommend getting rid of that local admin, but just make sure you change the password.
Make it secure.
Yeah. Now, there are end user trainings. There's trainings from Microsoft. There's out-of-box setup sheets that are online. We're giving sort of some places that you can find some stuff. Community resources. I want to point out, Graham, I don't always sort of go to classes for these things and everything else. When I have a problem, I will actually reach out to the community. There is a full Microsoft tech community. There's a user voice. Graham and I actually do what we call an MTR AMA, a Microsoft Teams Rooms Ask Me Anything. We host it. We have a lot of friends that come onto that place that are even smarter than us in a lot of these things. And we have an open dialogue. We sort of do this to have an open community. If you guys have questions, that is a landing page. We do it once a month. We get on Teams and we sort of bring it out. We ask that people mute their microphone, but then we ask if we sort of bring up a topic, you can sort of talk and you can ask us questions. We want to make sure that everybody understands why these systems are there, how they work, and if they're having problems, there's a good chance somebody else is having the problem. So we don't want to sort of bring that to the forefront. So I think you can see we've got a lot of information here. It's already been 90 minutes. If you want to follow us, we've got blogs, we've got Twitter, we've got LinkedIn. We will post answers to things. We will post tips and tricks. We also, on Twitter and LinkedIn, post the dates for our AMA all the time. We're very active. This is part of our presence here at Crestron, and outside of Crestron. So if you want to follow us, we sort of put it in some of the places that you can find us at. So Rich, I think it's back to you now, right?
It is, Jimmy. Thank you, Graham. Thank you, Jimmy. Great session. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Jason, for the supporting questions and answers as well. And thank you, Sharing Call, for all your support. We greatly appreciate everyone who's joined the class today. We are going to wrap up our recording in a moment. I did want to just point out we're going to stick around for questions and answers live. There's a lot of questions in the Q&A section we did not get to respond to yet, but we'll take care of those live. Thank you again. We're so glad you could join us. Tomorrow we have MUX 204, Creating the Optimal User Experience. That presentation is with Karen Goldman. She is our manager of user experience, and really will be going into the psychology of the UI and the user experience. And we're looking forward to that class. It's really going to be a good one. So we hope to see you tomorrow. For those of you who want to hang out, great. The class is now ended. We're wrapping up. Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you, Graham. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Golf clap.